Oh, we got mic'd up.
Yes, I forgot. We got the real deal here. So, first, Mayor, this is going to be an interview like never before. I'm going to start out with this picture. Do you know who this gentleman is? You shouldn't. His name is Dr. Hermann Rorschach.
The answer is no.
He's a Swiss psychiatrist that had perfected a way in which showing you pictures, ink blots, 10 of them, we could test your ability to acquire knowledge, your personality, and maybe even diagnose some psychological conditions. So here we go.
I can save you a lot of time. Go ahead.
So, what do you see, Mayor? Tell us what you see.
Mess. Somebody spilled something. Ink, I assume, but I don't know, man. I'd be afraid. You know how prepared I got for this afternoon? And you're making me deal with this? Well, I'm actually smart enough to know not to engage.
No, well, I know there's a series of 10, but we're not going to take you through this. What I do want to tell the audience is the mayor has not been prepared for any of the things that he's going to see for the rest of this presentation. We wanted to have him be able to fire from the hip, shoot from the heart, however you want to call it. So we're going to start out first with the first picture. Tell us about this, if you recognize it.
Yes, that's Hillsboro, Texas, where I was born. We moved to Houston when I was 4. My family divorced when I was 7. My mother remarried an elderly gentleman, and in the 5th grade, I moved back, actually 12 miles from Hillsboro in Whitney, Texas, about 12 miles off the highway. 30 kids in my class. I rode a bus about 12 miles. No running water. I know many of my friends have a hard time understanding it or believing it because I've had a very blessed life, but we didn't have running water. No one in the rural community did. It was before a co-op was developed. So it was a shocker, and I guess I'll be really transparent. One of my greatest enjoyments in life is running water, particularly a shower, because I had to take a tub bath that's probably not much larger than this chair. But that's Hillsboro, Texas. My father was a county clerk when I was 4, which I don't remember. I assume that's where I got the public service interest. They must have been discussing it at the evening table. But we moved to Houston and lived in the Heights for 2 years. Then we moved to glamorous Pasadena because that was a growing suburb. Great people. I went to the, I'm getting away from Hillsboro, but it's a heck of a story. I went to the 1st and 2nd grade in Gardens Elementary in Pasadena. My mother worked at Foley's downtown. My father was a social worker downtown. The Gulf Freeway was new, and believe it or not, they're still working on the Gulf Freeway. But anyway, we'll get to Pasadena in a minute because it made a difference in my life. And Hillsboro gave me real values, and then when we moved back to Houston in the 9th grade, big city opportunities. So I'm very pleased with how it all turned out.
Okay, we're not going to move you out of Hillsboro yet. We're going to test your knowledge. You know who this couple is?
Yeah, it looks like Bonnie and Clyde.
Yes, Bonnie and Clyde robbed the Hillsboro
I served with them
gas
in the
station.
legislature. Go ahead.
They robbed the Hillsboro gas station and pawn shop when you were early days. Do you know what this building is?
That looks like the Hillsboro or Hill County Jail.
It's the jail. We did our research. You've never been there officially. However, Elvis has. Elvis was arrested for drunken misconduct in 1958.
That's bad.
We'll keep moving along because we want to move this quickly. This is yours. So this is going to be an audio test. Ready? Everyone listen.
On the road again,
I'm sure you know that's Willie.
Yeah.
Why is that relevant to Hillsboro?
Willie Nelson grew up in Abbott, Texas, which was about 6 miles from Hillsboro. And when the Hill County Courthouse was destroyed, or certainly gutted, by fire in about '93, Bob Bullock was the lieutenant governor, who was from Hillsborough, got Willie to do a concert to start the repairs and transformation of the courthouse. And of course, he raised serious money, but it was not enough, so Bob Bullock, being a problem solver that had a huge impact on my public service, got the highway department to use their funds to restore the courthouse, and that was the beginning, Steve, of the courthouse restoration program, which has been so successful across rural Texas. Communities that didn't have money, but they had a historic courthouse. Now we have a historical courthouse repairs by TechStop.
Yeah. Okay.
Very creative.
Tell us about this picture.
That's my mother, who worked at Foley's. She got a divorce, and actually the Buckner Baptist home in Dallas had hired her for a dorm mother. She couldn't continue to support us. You know what child support was in 1955? $25 per person. But anyway, she was on her way up to Dallas to finalize the agreement. They would put my brother and I in the young male dorm as part of her compensation. And she ran into my stepfather, who she had known back in Hillsborough about 30 years before. His wife had just died of cancer, and 6 weeks later they were married. So on my 8th birthday, my father, who had me for visitation, dropped me off at the house, and I walked in and met this stepfather, Mayne, M-A-Y-N-E, Bennett, who had a huge impression on my life. I never saw him have an argument. But my mother, being in rural Texas, couldn't drive, so she would get the neighbors to take her. At a rural hospital in Whitney, they had a 6-month program. They needed nurses, probably still do in that rural setting. She took an LVN course and became an excellent nurse and cared for individuals, but she probably gave a good shot. I don't know if she didn't. I don't. No,
that's not you in the body cast. Is that's
no,
not you?
I don't recognize this job.
Okay, I had a question on this one.
I do recognize those.
Looking at this one and deciding, is that you in the upper left?
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
That was an Easter get-together with my brother, who's he's tall at that time. I actually outgrew him. That's Jim Whitmire, who married Kathy Whitmire when they were students out at U of H. He died of juvenile diabetes when he was 31, and subsequently she ran for office, and I worked with her for many years. These are my nephews, my sister's boys, so
it's great.
I hadn't seen that picture in a long, long time.
All right, this is going to be a little test. Bucket of sugar, some clothes, and money. How does that resonate on any childhood? I understand your house burned down.
Oh, it wasn't that fancy a bucket.
Does look like a nice bucket.
It was like a coffee can. In the 6th grade, I was with my father in Waco going to a Baylor football game as a visitation opportunity. And we didn't have cell phones in those days, of course, but the rural house burned down on a Saturday afternoon. Everyone in a rural area goes to town on Saturday. So my stepfather and mother had gone to Hillsborough. That's where we did our shopping. And they got notice that the house had burned to the ground. I did not know about it till my father dropped me off at 9 o'clock the next morning. And there was nothing but a chimney, and I got out and cried because I thought it had happened during the night, and there was some burnt clothing there. So what happened immediately in a rural setting was the neighbors, and I'm not talking about next door neighbors, I'm talking about probably a half a mile to a mile and further, started bringing items. Donations. My 6th grade class collected $11. They kept sending me out to put the flag up, and I wondered what the deal was. They were getting me out of the classroom every day for about a month. They collected $11. The blankets and other items were brought by the neighbors, but I was shocked by the bucket of sugar, which was actually in a coffee can. Whatever they had, they were willing to share, and it's made a profound impact on my life. I spend my days trying to repay those rural, low-income. My stepfather lived off Social Security. That's the reason the mother got the LVN license. So anyway, I thank you for reminding me of that.
Yeah, you're welcome. So you made the journey from Hillsborough down to Houston. What prompted that? What led to the move?
I was a ninth grade high school quarterback. I didn't want to leave Whitney. I was enjoying the good life. Slow quarterback, but I could throw the ball. And 2 weeks after midterm of the ninth grade, my mother called me and said, "We're moving to Houston." I started crying. I said, "No, not me." I only had 30 kids in the class. I was president of the class. It was a good life. Didn't have any water, but that's...
Had a lot of sugar.
But I didn't know any better. So 2 weeks after midterm, we moved back to Pasadena. She had to live, because she couldn't drive, across the street from Pasadena General Hospital so she could walk to work. My brother got a car, worked his way through U of H. But every weekend, this is significant in how I got here today, every weekend my father would pick me up for visitation because I didn't want to stay in that apartment. We've lived in apartments with my mother and the stepfather, except for the rural area. But every Friday, we would go to Lazy Brook, which is off of 610 and T.C. Jester. Every Friday night, we ate at White's Cafeteria at Merchants Park at 11th and Shepherd. Every Friday night. And the summer rolled around in June. I wanted a job. I didn't want to go spend the summer in an apartment in Pasadena. So I went over and asked the manager about a busboy job. He said, "Well, how old are you?" I said, "Well, I'll be 16 in August." And of course, this was 1st of June. He said, "Well, you have to be 16, but if you'll tell me you're 16, I'll hire you." You know, I was trained to kind of bend the rules a little bit for the right purpose.
For the right
So
purpose.
I worked all summer and saved money, and then come September, I didn't want to go back to Pasadena. So I told my mother I wanted to move in with my father, which had mixed results, and go to Waltrip High School. Great beginning, because the 10th grade was the first year in high school in HISD. So did that, and then worked every weekend at White's. And so 90 cents an hour the first summer, $1.10 the next summer, and $1.25 I think I topped out. But graduated, and that is Waltrip, and we had their band here earlier today. So I was going to go to Nacogdoches, Stephen F. Austin, bar money, room with a high school buddy. But everybody said you need to get freshman English out of the way. So there was South Texas Community College, where the U of H is downtown now. So I took freshman English, did okay, small classes, and I changed my mind. I stayed here and got 2 years of a 2-year diploma, associate's degree from that community college, and then I went to U of H, and the rest is history. There's a senior picture at Waltrip.
Look at that.
I've been very blessed. Every stage of my life, I've had assistance and mentoring by other successful people or compassionate people. You know, I know what it's like to not have air conditioning. We lived at Ella and 610, so my mother could work at Northwest. My mother knew I was not really getting along with a stepmother who kind of resented my father being closer to me than her, which I guess she had a point. But my mother knew I was unhappy my junior year, and she moved in an apartment across from Memorial Northwest. I subsequently moved in with her my junior year. That old rundown apartment would go a month without air conditioning. So I identify with the people that are challenged and struggled in Houston. And I will always be trying to pay back people that were nice and comforting to me.
Which brings me to the next thing.
Yeah.
You worked in the food stamp store and used to travel to homes to deliver them. Tell us about that experience.
Well, the job when I was going to the community college downtown was to work in the mail room at the welfare office, it was called, now Human Resources. I worked in the mail room, and after getting 60 years of college credits, I became a caseworker in the food stamp program. In 1971, it was a new nutrition program by the federal government. So I would do casework and do home visits all across Houston. Lyons Avenue in Waco, I make a home visit to verify the data that had been filled out in the application. So I heard people's hardship. Yeah. I can recall one that I've never forgotten. The lady said, I was asking her about her light bill. Why is your light bill so high? I had to verify management of the family. She said, I have to leave the lights on 24/7 so the rats don't chew the nipple off of the baby's bottom. I can't get that vision in that lady's discussion out of my mind. She could not turn the lights off because the baby would drop the bottle and the rats would chew the nipple. So I worked there all through U of H.
So before you respond to him, I want to read a quote. First, tell us who he was. Not much more, because I want to read this quote.
That's Dr. Murray, who I had as a political science professor, who had obviously a huge impact on my career.
So he sent us a quote. I just want to read it. In one class, we focused on recently enacted Texas state legislature plan. Poring over the map with me, John noted that a new state house districts included his Holdice High School and adjacent neighborhoods. And no incumbent it was, he thought. This is a district where a local boy could work hard with little money. Law school could wait. John Whitmire's successful shoe leather campaign in the spring of 1972 was followed by 50 years plus in Austin, including more than a decade as the Dean of the State of Texas. That service laid the groundwork for a successful mayoral race in 23. His old professor is mighty proud of John's achievement and humbled to have played a very small part in launching his distinguished career.
Thank you. Yes. Dr. Murray retired last year. I can't begin to tell you the hundreds, if not thousands, of students that he got interested in government, showed on the ins and outs of polling, campaigning, and really doing it for the right reason. He was very quiet when he spoke. People listened, but wherever he is today, I salute him for putting me on a public service career. Like, in my judgment, there's nothing like it. If you love people, you want to make a difference, I would urge everyone to consider running for office. And if you don't, anyone that can hear my voice, I believe, is a public servant, whether you're ever on the ballot or not. And I believe someday we're going to be judged. What did you do while you were a public servant? And I was 22 when I went by his office. I needed more time for a paper. I was not an outstanding student, always working. And he was looking at this map and asked me where I lived, Oak Forest. I looked at it, my church, my mother was a nurse there, Waltrip High School. I wish I had the time to tell you when you knock on people's door. First of all, it was 1972. The Vietnam War was winding down. I was clean cut. And people say, I'm going to vote for you because I can't get my son to wear his hair like yours. Really a heck of a reason. Or they would say I went to Walter, and they'd say, my daughter graduated in 65. Did you know Betty Lewis? And I said, oh, yes, how is she? Of course, I didn't finish to 68. I didn't know Betty, but I got it down pretty quick.
If Betty's out there, we're sorry.
And it was a tough race. Everybody thought I was doing it as a class project, but I was dead serious. I knocked every door between Hempstead Highway and 45, 11th Street and Pinemont. Some of them I knocked twice. But I do believe $5,000 I'd saved to go to law school. I do believe it was a divine intervention. You're just not supposed to get elected to the legislature 4 years out of high school with limited resources, except a desire to make a difference.
Right. So the next few pictures I'm going to race through because I want to get to current state.
I'm taking too much time.
Okay. So no, you're not. You're doing a great job. We already know you're a big Cougar fan, and we're going to go quickly. Here's first in 73, Texas House of Representatives.
Yeah.
I love this next picture. Look at that. I call it a swagger. Look at that swagger that you're moving through the hall like, stand away. I'm moving through.
I like that suit and tie.
Right. Elected to the Senate in 82.
Yeah.
Moving on 92. A unique year. You must have that a terrible thing happen to you and your family that I think really shaped you, or at least many of the things you feel about. Tell us about 1992.
92, January 1, we'd had a great day at my mother's house, who lived in Timber Grove. We lived, my two daughters and wife, up near, on North Shepherd Park Terrace, on the end of the corner of a middle-income neighborhood. So after a great day at my mother's, we were pulling in the garage, and Whitney, my oldest daughter, was with her grandparents visiting. Sarah, the 9-year-old, and I were at the front of the car fixing to disengage a burglar alarm, which we put in because people just kept stealing bicycles and other items. So anyway, as we were going out, and I was just about to disengage the alarm, I'd given my wife, Becky, my keys so she could get the dishes out of the trunk, and she lets out a blood-curdling scream. "Oh, no, no, John, John." I'd never heard such an outcry from her. I thought I'd run over somebody. So I ran the length of the car, and I didn't know, but a masked robber had blocked the driveway, got out with a gun, and asked her for her purse. She gave him the purse, she stated, and then when they reached for her, she let out the scream. So I ran the length of the car. The Lord was looking out for me, there's no question, because I don't think they knew. It was a dark garage. They knew where I was. But he swung the gun into my face, and I backed up the length of the car, begging him not to shoot. "I'll give you anything, don't shoot." My daughter Sarah hid at the front of the car. I quite frankly don't know what Becky did, other than I did everything right, and I think, again, divine intervention saved me, because the Lord had bigger plans for me. I reached in my pocket and gave him my money clip, and I said, "Just take this and leave." And somebody in the car said, "Get his wallet." I said, "Here, take it, take it." And he turned and left. I reached over and hit the panic button on the alarm, and strobe lights and sirens start. My wife is screaming, "They're going to come back, they're going to come back." We couldn't go into the house because the keys were in her purse that they took. Sure. You go across the yard, you push your family over an 8-foot fence. I do a nosedive. You go to a family next door, and you don't even wait for them to open the door. You just run in. I never pull in my driveway at night, that I don't relive that. It was a huge motivation for my advocacy for public safety. And I'll even tell you the rest. It led Bob Bullock, that powerful lieutenant governor, knew what it did to me and my family. You get another alarm system, you get a guard dog, you get a gun, you do everything right, but you never are the same. And I was fortunate because physically I was not harmed. Psychologically, I live it every time I go into my garage. But Bob Bullock said, "We need a new chairman of criminal justice." I'd never been on criminal justice. I wasn't a defense attorney, but we had a huge problem in the state prison system of having a revolving door for lack of capacity. Crack cocaine had been introduced to the streets of our cities in the early 90s, and we couldn't keep up with that growth. So we went into a huge expansion. First, I turned him down. I thought the fix was on to ruin my career. It's almost an impossible task. We had 60,000 inmates sleeping on county jail floors. We had 150,000 people waiting to get in. It was just a broken system. But I surrounded myself with smart people, which I currently am doing. Team players, experts in the field. And we went into a huge expansion, but then I soon realized you can't build your way out of this problem. So I came up with the policy, and it got national attention. You lock up people you're afraid of, not those that you're mad at. The fellow that robbed me got 25 years sentence. I don't apologize. In fact, if I had time, I'd tell you that's what we need to be doing. And we can put more police on the street, which we're going to do, but the courthouse has to process them. We've got way too many violent offenders out on bond, fugitives. We've got to address that. But back to 92. We were successful in doing drug and alcohol treatment, mental health services, and we significantly reduced that population. And we put very dangerous people behind bars for long periods of time, which I don't apologize for. So that's what I've done for the last 30 years. And it was so successful that when I retired from the Senate last year, certainly I darn sure didn't retire. But I was the only Democratic chair in a very Republican-controlled legislative body. So I still, I went to a second chance breakfast for inmates the other day. I know treatment and rehabilitation works. And I also know being tough on crime. In fact, somebody said you should have copyrighted it. I came up and was invited to the Obama White House at a round table to discuss, first of all, re-entry. We got to help inmates coming out of the Harris County Jail and the prisons back into society with health care and apartments and job opportunities. But I came up with a statement, we need to be tough and smart on crime. And that's what I just described for you. And I missed that work. And that's why when I ran and Elizabeth Brock asked me to run, I said, public safety will be my highest priority. That if we don't solve public safety, the infrastructure, and I could go through the list of things, quite frankly, I'm anxious to talk about, because we are going to address the homeless issue, and we're going to do it successfully. City gets recognized for affordable housing and permanent housing for the homeless, but they're missing the part of getting people off the streets, sleeping across this city. It's not good for them, and it's certainly not good for the public. Mike Nichols, probably the expert in town on homeless. I got him from the Homeless Coalition to head up the housing department, which will make housing the ultimate goal. Then I take Chief Satterwhite, put him at Homeland Security. Homeland Security, we're going to be innovative. That's part of helping with the homeless issue. So, quite frankly, I would love to talk city issues. This is a great city. In fact, let me go ahead while I'm on a roll, tell you about the state of the city. We have a great city, great people, but we have challenges, just like all major cities do. The difference is Houston fixes its problems, challenges. And so if you leave here today, what's the state of the city of Houston? It's a great city, great people, and we're going to address our challenges. In 1912, civic and business leaders were sitting around, we need to do something bold for Houston. Someone said, well, White Oak Bayou and Buffalo Bayou keep flooding downtown. Why don't we just let them extend them all the way to the Gulf? 1912, we got one of the finest ports in the country because people were bold and visionaries, which most of us in this room are. 1945, Bill, let me just spend several minutes on your success. If you haven't seen TMC3, you need to get out there like I was 2 weeks ago. Perfect research, innovation. They had 122 officers on their police department. It's one of the safest places to be, and I applaud that. And we're going to let that be our model. But 1945, M.D. Anderson had made enough money in the cotton business, he wanted to contribute back to society. He purchased a piece of land, which is today the Med Center, 3 miles from downtown. You ought to get a picture of it. But that's what boldness and visionary and problem solving can accomplish. And the best is yet to come. Now, let me close with this on this particular part of the discussion. When I was talking to the Med Center officials the other day, Bill and his team, I was going on and on. It was so safe. It was so new. They're changing people's lives with research. By the way, 1 out of 5 employees in the Med Center were not born in the U.S. Keep that as an item to be focused on. But I told them, you've got such a model city, but we got to leave here in a minute. So I actually left and got to Alameda in North McGregor to go and get a Diet Coke, and there was a homeless guy passed out on his bicycle. I took pictures of it to share with my team in the community. The manager follows me out of the store after getting Diet Coke. He said, Mayor, you've got to do something. You've got to help me. It's killing my business. Folks, we're all in this together. And I applaud Med Center. Michael Heckman, description of what we're going to do in central Houston, you won't believe it. And let me tell you about that boldness. When they put the freeway, Steve, underneath George Brown, there's going to be 31 acres on that cap. Completely open up the east side. But what do we do with that 31 acres? We're actually in discussion of that. And I could go on and on. UT, Renew, you and I teamed up and told them leave U of H alone a couple years ago, but our friends at UT still own 300 acres at South Main in 610. Can you imagine how we continue to grow? Memorial and Herman are just about at capacity. Where's Houston going to be 20, 30 years from now with green space? I'm talking to the state about a state-city partnership for another Memorial or Herman Park on South Main. I am so fired up, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity to use my experience and contacts to lead this great city. And I thank you for what you're doing out there, because it's just, everybody's got to go see it. It's that outstanding.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to now rapid fire.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't give short answers.
So I want to talk about collaboration, because one of the things that your major focus is collaboration, state, county, city. What's your strategy to do that?
My strategy is continue doing what I've been doing in Austin. The sad news is the city of Houston, when I took over in recent years, and the county, had no relationship with state government. It became so personal between the elected officials of different parties. They wouldn't talk. They wouldn't collaborate. Houston suffered. Harvey recovery money didn't come to Houston because they call each other names. I will work with anyone if it's improving people's lives, and that's how I remain chairman of criminal justice. Dan Patrick, I thank you for taking some heat from his party. Some really hard-nosed folks said, you can't have a Democratic chairman. He said, well, the Republican senators want him there. He's the best on that subject. So collaboration works in the business world, in elected public officials. We were so prepared for the storms. I don't care what the Chronicle says. We were very prepared for all the storms. Derecho was sudden and intense, but we were ready. I worked my way from a Little League game where we thought we were going to get blown away over to the emergency center. I was the first one there. I got to tell you, this is a good one. So I get there, and it is really storming. I had a friend with me. We'd gone to a Little League game, grandsons. I get up to the guardhouse, and the lady won't come out of the guardhouse and let me in the emergency center. And I'd already been in Oak Forest at a ballpark, so I had close proximity. She wouldn't let me in. She kept pointing to her ID. I need an ID to get in. I said, ma'am, I'm the mayor. Let me in. But that was a sudden, intense storm, and our first responders, our emergency center, the collaboration with the county. And thank you, Commissioner Briones. I'll give you a shout out for the collaboration, not only on storm recovery, but also we're sharing facilities. She and I are about to announce a major multi-service center in Memorial Park so families can go there. In the recovery, debris pickup, Tom Ramsey. Tom, thank you for being here. So Whitmire, I'll help you inside my precinct within the city of Houston. He and I are sharing the cost of redoing Campbell and I-10. The trucks tore it up. He's told me, and this is an excellent example of collaboration, the city roads in my precinct, I'll share the cost 50-50 with you. We are going to make a difference. Now, I could go on back to the reason it is so important. I get along with folks that want to help Houston. I don't care, and let me tell you about during the storm. I got sidetracked there for a minute. During this last storm, Beryl, let me just talk about the preparation there, and thank you, Tom Munoz, and all our first responders. During the middle of the storm, first of all, Saturday morning, we were told by the National Weather Service that it was going into Mexico or South Texas. If you can't, you know, I know weathermen are guessing at it a lot, but anyway, we stayed ready. Chief Satterwhite and I were out Monday morning at 2 o'clock on the streets of Houston on patrol, waiting for the storm. And he and I looked at each other at 2. We made a scene, a crime scene. Maybe we got bad information. We went home at 3 and all hell broke loose. I couldn't get back to the emergency center till later that morning. We lost one of our civil employees, HPD, going through water. But let me talk about collaboration. Because we were without electricity, The med center, as you know, we're not releasing people that were recovering from surgery. You don't send someone in recovery for a major surgery to a house without electricity. So our ambulances on emergency calls were backing up at Memorial Hermann and Ben Top. We had 4%. I wish I could share with y'all all my experiences since taking office. We had 4% of our ambulance inventory on call. The rest were backed up at the emergency room door. So we got on the phone, collaboration with the State Emergency Center. I talked to Nim Kidd, who's one of the best emergency center operators. I said, Kim, we got to have ambulances. Mm-hmm. We got 25 ambulances that evening from around the state. The chief satellite mobilized HPD. They were working 12-hour shifts. Some were not going home. But they couldn't get into our dark neighborhoods like we wanted. So I called Nim Kidd again. I need law enforcement. We got dark neighborhoods. The traffic lights are not operating. No traffic enforcement. We got 100 officers from Fort Worth and across this state. That works, and we're going to continue that. I've got 3 county commissioners, Garcia, Briones, and Ramsey, that are my full-time partners that are wanting to solve problems. We don't care what party you belong to, where you come from. If you love Houston, you love people, we welcome you. And let me give a shout-out also. Let me give you a shout-out. You know why Houston is such a great city? You know, I could talk about what I've discovered at the city, but I don't want to waste any time about what I inherited. I want to go forward. But let me tell you, after 8 months, what I've discovered, and I want you to really think about this. In a city government that has to be improved, and we're doing it regularly with great leadership, Angela Blanchard, who ran Baker Ripley for years, is working for us in resiliency. But let me tell you what makes this city so great while we're trying to improve city government. It's institutions. Houston First, Houston Partnership, the academic community, our faith community, the Med Center, the port, NASA. I can't begin to tell you how, on a daily basis, I see how well we're doing. It's because of the collaboration of all the stakeholders. Now, can you imagine if we get the city of Houston government at the level that we have a right to expect? We'll deal with the finances. I'm working through collaboration to deal with the finances. We're doing everything we can to recruit additional police officers and firefighters. Since we had to settle the firefighter disagreement with the previous administration, 8 years they didn't talk to each other. You can't recruit people if they don't know their career plan. It was always going to be expensive. The partnership internally was saying $800 to $1 billion to go back 8 years and deal with benefits and get a 5-year contract going forward. We did it for $650. We were fair to Houstonians taxpayers and fair to the firefighters. You cannot have a great city if you don't have sufficient police and fire and EMS and all the things that go into quality of life. So anyway, I appreciate you for allowing me to give a long answer. We have such a great city. Let me tell you what, if we work together, and I'm prepared to give you 8 years of some of the best years left in my life. I work 18-hour days. I love the challenge. Connections, collaboration, experience matters. And I look forward to going to work. I've never worked harder in my life. It has cut in to grandkids' time. And I just thinking of grandkids, I think of my 2 beautiful daughters here. And Whitney told me, can you imagine this? Their entire life, I've been a public official. Can you imagine that? Whitney was born in 81, Sarah in 82. Their whole life, their father's been a public official. You know what, though? I'll brag on. They're normal as they can be. They never grew up. They never grew up thinking because their dad was the most senior state senator that they were entitled to anything. And I'm so proud of them. And I've got to share this personal note. You can't imagine how much advice you get before you come down here. Oh, Whitmire, talk about this. Start out on this. The best advice I got today was from Whitney, my oldest daughter. She said, Dad, you have to smile more. So, Whitney, this is for you. And Sarah, Sarah keeps me balanced. Anyway, I'm excited to be here. I'm fired up. When I leave here, we're going to go back to work. I would advise you that an HPD officer was shot this morning making a house invasion call. He was very unfortunate to get shot, but it went through his leg, so he's okay. Keep him in your prayers. But, folks, I can't tell you, if we work together and we collaborate with these other levels of government. Oh, the private sector. Chevron, you're always welcome to move your corporate headquarters to Houston. And Steve Kane and I, and thank you for sponsoring. You know, some energy writer for the Chronicle, which I shouldn't even give them an advertisement, I certainly don't intend to, said Chevron moving to Houston really is not important. Wrong. We needed that. They did it and announced it after the storms. People want to come to Houston. People were worried about our image. You can't pick up a med center and move it anywhere. People are coming from around the world to our med center. The royal families send their family members to the med center. Our refineries, our port, you don't move that. It's still attracting people. We've been discovered, folks, from across this nation and the world. People know about Houston, and they want to come here because you can be somebody in Houston. I love that graffiti over on the rail deal that drives Union Pacific crazy, but that's their problem. On coming in 45, it says, be someone. It happens. Each and every one of you have such an opportunity, and so many established, successful people here. Now we've got to do it for our children and grandchildren. That's who I go to work for every day. We've got to just do quality of life issues till we get it to the standard we want. Other cities don't do that. L.A., Chicago, New York, they keep their problems. They just cover them up, or you read about it. We fix things. And don't forget those individuals that did the port, the med center, and one more, the spaceport. You've got to see that out at NASA. I'm convinced as I'm sitting here, someday, somebody's going to say, Houston, we've landed, and this is going to be Mars. We're talking to all the new scientific space. Hell, I just forgot. What's Musk's team? SpaceX.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't SpaceX have a role in the med center? They're bringing our astronauts home now. We might as well use their expertise. Anyway,
Mayor?
I'm running too long.
No, you're not. I just on behalf of everyone, I want to thank you for 51 years of active service, and I couldn't be more excited for the next 8 years. Let's have a warm welcome to our new mayor. Thank you. Thank you. Great job.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Good job.
Thank you.
You let me go. Thank y'all.